Hey guys, I'm Erin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing something a little different. I'm doing my first ever tier ranking video. And so today I'll be ranking all of the 2021 releases that I read in the year 2021. So for my tiers, I wanted to do something a little different than just like a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 star level tier. And I also wanted them to have kind of fun, unique names. And so I took inspiration from my second favorite hobby, which is watching baseball, and did my tiers based on MLB team names. So if anyone watching this likes baseball and can appreciate or criticize the team names I chose and the reasons why, hit me up in the comments. I'm kind of operating on the assumption that the only people who are going to find the tier names amusing and get them is me and my husband, who helped me come up with them. But I'd be love to be pleasantly surprised by any other baseball fans who might be watching this. So I'll start by explaining my tiers. And so my bottom tier is the Houston Trastros, because the Houston Astros are the worst, and so are these books. So that is our bottom tier. Our next tier is the Lowell Mets, which is I guess, Lol Mets is the meme reaction on Reddit, especially to the New York Mets. And so this tier is books that started off good, or started off I was excited for them, or whatever it may be. And at some point during the book, beginning, middle, end, they took a nosedive, because that's kind of how the New York Mets season goes every year. And unlike the Mets, these were books that, I was initially rooting for. Can't say I initially root for the Mets really ever, however. Next, we have the Milwaukee Brewers tier, and so these are for books that I had an expectation going in, and they met that expectation. Now, usually my expectation going into books, any book I read, is kind of I think I will like this, it'll be a 4-star read. That's like my average expectation. That's not always true. So there are some books that might hit this tier list that I had higher expectations that they met, or lower expectations that they also unfortunately met. Next is the San Francisco Giants tier, and so this tier is for books that whatever expectations I had, they just really exceeded them. Whether I had low expectations, no expectations, or good expectations, they just really blew me out of the water. These are the exceeded expectations tier. And the final tier, the Atlanta Braves tier. So the Atlanta Braves were the 2021 World Series champions, and also my personal favorite baseball team. And so these books are the best of the year and my personal favorite books. So let's get started. I have 76 books to go through, so I'm really hoping that this video isn't going to be absurdly long. Fingers crossed, but it's definitely a smorgasbord of genres, of age range. It's got a little bit of everything in here. Fantasy, romance, sci-fi, nonfiction, mystery, got a little bit of everything. And they uploaded in alphabetical order, so I'm just going to be going through them in alphabetical order. All right. So, starting with our first book, A Desolation Called Peace by Katie Martine. This is the sequel to A Memory Called Empire, and this one is a solid Milwaukee Brewers tier, because I really liked A Memory Called Empire, and I expected to kind of have the same level of enjoyment of A Desolation Called Peace, kind of a 4-star level, and it gave me exactly what I wanted, and thus it is a Milwaukee Brewers tier book. Next is A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsk. This one, I think, also is going to be a Milwaukee Brewers tier. I also feel like this is probably going to be the biggest tier as far as what we're going to see. But yeah, this is another one. Again, I enjoyed this book. I really liked the setting. I thought it was a fun romance, and it was just, it gave me kind of exactly what I wanted. Just like a fun historical fantasy set Edwardian times with a little bit of romance, and it delivered exactly that. Didn't blow me out of the water, but I enjoyed it. Next is A Vow So Bold and Deadly. This one is our first entry into the Lowell Mets tier. This was not a horrible book. This was just a fine book, but unfortunately, I expected a little bit better than fine, because I liked the first 2 books in this series better than I ended up liking this one, and I kind of thought I would like this one the same, but it was just kind of a weak ending to the series. I didn't hate it, but I just wish it was better, so it is a Lowell Mets tier book. Next, we have Accidentally Engaged by Farrah Heron, a romance, and this one is another Milwaukee Brewers. I expected, nice, cute romance, and I got a nice, cute romance. It had a baking competition storyline, which I really liked. But yeah, just a solid 4-star romance, which is what I expected out of it. Okay, next we have Ace of Spades, which is a YA mystery, and this one's actually going to go in the Lol Mets category, but I did like this one better than the other one in this category. This was a good book, but I just heard so much, oh my god, this is the best book of the year hype about it, and I liked it, but not quite that much, so it did underperform for me a little bit, but still a good book. So again, with all these three expectation tiers, you could have good and bad books next to each other in these, which I thought would be kind of a fun, again, different spin on the tiers here. Next is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, and our first entry into the San Francisco Giants tier because I really liked this book. This was a 5-star read for me, and I did not expect it to be a 5-star read because neither of the first two books in the series was gonna be 5 stars, but it really surprised me with how much I liked it. Especially since, like, one thing I haven't loved about Talia Hibbert's books is her main female characters tend to be super prickly, which is something that works for some people, and hadn't totally worked for me in the first two books. But I actually really, really liked this book. More than I thought. I thought it'd be like a solid 4-star, and this was a 5-star. It was really cute. I really did love it. Next, All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace. This is a Lowell Metz book. It was fine. I did not hate it. Again, this is a 3-star book. I thought the first one was just the super fun kind of like swashbuckling pirate found family friends adventure, and that's kind of what I was hoping to get out of this one, and I just didn't get any of those elements in this one. This one focused a lot more in on one character, and I found myself frequently exasperated with some of her decisions, so unfortunately did not live up to the first one, and it was just fun. Next, we have Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, another San Francisco Giants book. This one, I had heard good things, but I had not read a middle grade book in a long time, and it's been even longer since I read a non-Rick Riordan middle grade book, so I kind of tempered my expectations, thinking, I don't really know how I feel about middle grade now. Maybe I will be like it, but I really liked it. It was really fun. I really liked the Men in Black, but with kids vibe, and I definitely really, really liked it. Among Thieves by M.J. Kuhn, another Milwaukee Brewers book here. This was a fun heist book, and I expected a fun heist book. And so, yeah, gave me exactly what I wanted and expected out of it. All right, Anchored Hearts by Priscilla Oliveris, a romance. This is a Lowell Metz book. I thought it'd be really cute. I had heard this author kind of hyped up on a podcast I listened to, opinions I do trust, and so I thought it was gonna be good, and it was just fine. I just didn't love the romance in it, and so it was not a horrible book, but definitely underperformed what I hoped and expected. Next, we have Bombshell by Sarah Mclean, and this one's going in the Milwaukee Brewers tier. I had not read a Sarah Mclean book before, so I didn't have super duper high expectations, but I thought it'd be, a solid romance, and it was. It was a fun girl gang historical romance, but didn't blow my socks off, so just a really good 4-star read, and what I expected and wanted out of it. Okay, Christmas Kisses. This was a anthology collection of a bunch of, I think, smaller I think a lot of them are self-published. This was definitely a self-published anthology, self-published by one of the authors, I guess, the organizing author. And, I had kind of no expectations for it. It was a bunch of authors I'd never heard of nor read, so I kind of had no, but it was nice. So this one's hard because some of the stories did exceed my expectations and some were just okay. So I really don't know where to put it. I think I'll put it this one's hard. This one is hard because I don't know. I guess I had no expectations and I did end up liking some of them quite a bit, so therefore I'm going to put it in the San Francisco Giants, but it wasn't overall like there was definitely some duds in there, but again, because of how low my expectations were, it did exceed them, so I'll put it there. Next is Finlay Donovan is Killing It by El Cozy Mano. This one, another Milwaukee Brewers. I had heard again and expected this to be kind of like a fun mystery, and it was. It was fun, and I enjoyed it. Next, we have The Firekeeper's Daughter. This is our first Atlanta Braves tier book. Woo! So I loved this book. This book was amazing. I had heard a couple good things about it, and so I ended up picking it up from Book of the Month one month, and oh my god, it exceeded my expectations so much that it became a favorite. So that's boosting it up to this tier from just the exceeding expectations tier because wow, amazing. Definitely one of my favorite books of the year. Next is Flamefall by Rosaria Munda, and this one is going to go again, I think, in the Atlanta Braves category. It actually, I guess technically it hits the Milwaukee Brewers meets my expectations because I loved the first book and so thus had really high expectations for this one, and it met them because my expectations were so high it couldn't exceed them. But it is one of my favorite books of the year, and therefore I feel like I gotta put it up in the favorites tier, you know? Next is For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. Hmm, what were my expectations going into this one? I think it's here. I think I expected this to be just kind of an entertaining thriller, and it was. It was definitely a really solid, entertaining thriller. All right, next is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, and this is going to be a Lowmeds book. This one, part of the problem was I expected it to be romance because that's what it was marketed as, and it definitely was not. It was just contemporary fiction. And this is one that I think I initially gave it 4 stars, but the longer it's been since I read it, when I think about it, my like overall lasting feelings on it are more kind of meh. And so, yeah, those things I didn't hate it. It wasn't the meh feelings are not so negative to put it in dislike because for being honest, this last category I think is only going to have a couple. This is not going to be a highly populated category, but yeah, it just wasn't as good as I wanted, and even in hindsight, it wasn't as good as I even remember it being. Initially, it was just okay. Next, we have How Sweet It Is by Dylan Newton, and I'm gonna put this one in the San Francisco Giants category because this wasn't a 5-star romance or a new favorite or anything, but I had never heard of this author, and so I had very little expectations, and I thought it was a really cute romance. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so next is Incense and Sensibility by Sonali. This is going in the Giants Exceeds Expectations category. So this is the third book in a Jane Austen retelling series, and I liked the first, but was kind of meh on the second. So I almost didn't even continue with this series, but I thought I'd give it the third one a try because I did like the first one, and so but I kind of had pretty low expectations going into it, and wow, I really like this one. Definitely my favorite of the 3 in the series. It got me reinvested in the series into the fourth one coming out this year. I just really loved this one. This one was excellent. Next, I had Into the Heartless Wood by Joanna with Meyer, and this one is a met met expectations Brewers book. It was good. This was a new YA fantasy that even still this came out at the beginning of the year, and I still don't think I've heard anyone else actually talk about it. But I kind of expected just to be kind of like this nice fairy tale-y foresty vibes, and it did that. It was a really solid standalone, so definitely recommend. Next, I have It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. Honestly, this one's a favorite of the year, I think. I definitely had high expectations and I just loved it so much because I had heard that this was kind of inspired, the main character was inspired by a character from the TV show Schitt's Creek, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows, and it just totally blew out of the water. I thought and expected it to be good, and it was just amazing. I adored it. Next, I'm putting Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee in the Giants category. This one definitely knocked the socks off of the first 2, and I think because of that, it exceeded some of my expectations. Because I definitely enjoyed the first 2, but this one was just so good. So definitely a step up, and therefore exceeded the expectations I had going into it. Especially because having heard about how much time this book covered, I was a little wary on how she was going to accomplish that well, and she really knocked it out of the park. Next, I have Life's Too Short by Abby Yeminez. I'm putting this one in kind of right where I expected. I disliked the first book in the series, liked the second, and kind of thought I would like the third, and I did. It was good. Definitely a really solid read. So yeah, don't have a ton to say on that one. So next up is Lore by Alexandra Bracken. So in the second half of this year, I felt like I saw a lot of places and people being like, did anyone even like Lore? Like I felt like everyone disliked it, but I liked it. So here you go. You found the person who liked it. I thought it was fun. It was a fun YA fantasy standalone, and I enjoyed it. And it kind of gave me just kind of what I expected from it. So definitely a good read in my opinion. Next is Love at First by Kate Claiborne. This one was also, probably what I expected. I had pretty high expectations for this one because I really loved love lettering by this author, and I really love this one as well. So it met my high expectations, but not quite a favorite. So next is Love Songs for Skeptics by Christina Fisheris, and this one's between these two. I think this is going to be my first Houston Trash Rose. So obviously anything that goes in this category is also by definition a disappointment, but this one, when I like think back upon it, my prevailing emotion towards it is my negative emotions for how much I disliked how this book went, more than the emotion of like feeling down about it being a disappointment. So anyways, yeah, I very much dislike this one. I just thought it had a very poorly done love triangle, and then it spent half the book focused on one point of the triangle and like not on the second, and then all of a sudden it switched to the second. I was like, why did we spend half the book with not even the, I didn't enjoy it at all. So next is Makeup Breakup by Lily Minen, and somehow this one's ending up in the what I expected category, because I didn't really like this book, but I had such low expectations that it kind of ended up giving me what I expected by nature of the fact that I didn't expect much from it, because I had just seen a lot of not great reviews of it, but I already had it out from the library, so I figured I'd read it anyways, and it was, yeah, it was not great. So that one's actually hit where I thought it would. Maybe in Paradise by Libby Hubsher. This one, Lolmet's disappointment. Wow. I didn't hate this book. This book isn't super bad, trash stars level, but it was not what I expected at all. I thought it'd be kind of a fun islandy romance, and it ended up being not a romance and kind of sad. Like, it wasn't horrible for what it was, but the fact that it kind of just ended up being like a sad contemporary, very disappointing reading experience with it. Next is Much Ado About You by Samantha Young. This is another disappointment. It just had such a cool premise with like the girl on vacation like helping run a bookstore, and it had a lot of like things going for it that I enjoyed initially, and it just like didn't quite deliver on them. Like it kind of felt like it tried to put too many things in it. It's like just a little bit too much. It's not horrible, but definitely not as good as I had hoped it would be. Next is Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This is the favorite of the year. I unexpectedly love this. I read it as part of a kind of a reading challenge, and I didn't really know what to expect going into it because Katie Roberts leans more towards the erotic romance, which isn't usually my vibe, but I really enjoyed this. It was great. I loved Hayes and Persephone, and I loved it. I loved it. Never Fall for Your Fiance by Virginia Heath. This gave me what I expected. I enjoyed it. It was a fun rom-com. It was a historical rom-com, and it's one of the only romance books I've seen marketed as a rom-com that I think actually personified the idea and vibe of a rom-com, and it was fun, and I look forward to reading more from her. Next is One by One by Ruth Ware, another one right here. Again, this is definitely gonna be my biggest category. Yeah, this was a fun isolation mystery. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, and I expected to enjoy it. Here we are. One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This one. So I definitely liked this book, for sure, but I had such high expectations because I adored Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I just didn't like it as much. So despite giving this book, I think, a 4.5 star, I think this is going to end up being the highest rated book on my low mitts, because the romance just fell a little short for me. I was kind of bummed about it, and it was like everything else about it I really loved, so it made up for it as far as like overall feelings. But yeah, um, and let me just tell you the scene. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna have to put that with my own tiers I've created here. I think this one has to go in the disappointed, because I hyped this one up so much. The bar on this one was just so high that it didn't quite hit it, despite being really, really quite good. People We Meet on Vacation. This one is exactly what I expected. Very high bar. I thought this was going to be a 5-star, and it was just not quite enough to hit my favorites tier. But again, this is one that I just had such a high bar that it hit. Then it performed how I expected. Portrait of a Scotsman. I think I'm gonna have to put this one as a kind of a lower rated low mets as well. Even though, again, this is like One Last Stop. This is one I really liked. Like, I gave this one a 4-star. It was definitely a good book. I had adored the previous one in this series, and I really liked the first one. I just thought this was gonna be another 5-star favorite, and it just wasn't quite. It fell a little short for me in that it kind of briefly lost its identity as a romance book and became just historical fiction for a couple of chapters before like finding itself again. And I didn't hate that, but it was a little disappointing because I just had such high hopes for this one. As with One Last Stop, the bar was just so high that anything less than perfection is going to end up in its underperforming. Project Hail Mary, again, we're on a slew here of ones that I liked but had such high expectations for that they didn't hit, that they're going to end up in this tier anyway. This was one that I thought was going to be a 5. It was on my 5-star prediction list, and it just wasn't a 5-star. It was a 4-star, but it underperformed. I didn't like it as much as The Martian, which I think is an unpopular opinion. I pretty much see everyone who's liked both liking this one better, but I just didn't like it as much. I just thought the science aspect of this one was too much. He like leaned too hard into spending too much time explaining some of the science that like it made my eyes glaze over a little bit as someone like, and I'm a sciencey person. So for that reason, it was just a 4-star. It lost me a little bit in some of those scenes. Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This one, very good, and I heard great things, thought it was going to be good, and it was really good. Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. This one's actually going to go in my overperforming tier, and I think this is going to end up being the lowest ranked overperformer, because this was only a 3-star read, but I just had such low expectations for this book because of my feelings on her previous two. I did not like The Hating Game, and I DNF'd 99% Mine. So I had such low expectations, but I was kind of, sounds like a fun premise, and I don't know, I feel like I just, especially with romance authors, since they're such quick reads, I'll like keep giving them a shot if the premise sounds intriguing, and it did. And, you know, it was definitely my favorite of the ones I read by her. Not amazing, though. Again, it was still a 3-star, but definitely way exceeded my horribly low expectations of it. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. All right, this was a favorite. This book was incredible. It was so good. I heard about this first on the Fated Mates podcast, and they did an interview with the author and talked about it, and I was like, oh, it sounds kind of intriguing. It was amazing. This is one of the most well-written romance novels I have ever read. It's incredible. It was just so good. Like, amazing. Shipped by Angie Hockman. This isn't overperformed expectations because I know I thought it'd be fun and cute, and I was actually really impressed with it. This is definitely, I think I kind of described it when I talked about it, I guess, in like my first wrap up last year, that it felt like a better executed version of The Hating Game as far as the office place enemies to lovers aspect, because this one I just think executed the enemies to lovers aspect, and like I understood why at least she disliked him. It was like very logical, but the reason wasn't an insurmountable thing. Like he wasn't so much of like a jerk that I was like, how could you get over that kind of deal? So I thought they balanced that really well, and I thought it was really fun. So yeah, I was definitely pleasantly surprised with really loving this one. See Me Forgotten by Jessica S. Olsen. I think this one by definition is gonna have to go on the low meds. Same with the string I have here, because this was a 5-star prediction that was only 4 stars. So again, I really liked it. It was a gender bent Phantom of the Opera retelling, which was fun, and I had a great time reading it, but it just wasn't a 5-star. Like I just didn't have that extra that made me totally fall in love with it, and because I put it on a 5-star predictions list, it by definition underperformed. So that one's going here with some of the other similar stories over here. This is quite a diverse category. Next is Sister Song by Lucy Holland. This one was good. I enjoyed it. It gave me kind of exactly that. It hit the right itch for the kind of historical fantasy mythology retelling trend that adult fantasy is having, and it really hit that itch that I expected when I picked it up. It was definitely good, but not a new favorite or anything. The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I think this one's gonna go here. Christina Lauren is one of those authors too that I've never loved, like totally loved anything they've written, but the first book I read by them was 4 stars, so I've been chasing another 4-star book, and this one has been my second favorite. This was a 3.5. So, because I haven't been enjoying the ones I read after that 4-star one, I have tempered my expectations to kind of middle of the road expectations, and it did kind of hit that. So there we go. Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This one was a low met. I did not hate this one as much as many people did, so definitely not down here. But I did not like it as much as I had hoped based on the premise. So I thought it was just okay. So unfortunately, I had slightly higher expectations for it than just okay. The Bombay Prince. This one is so disappointing in the low mets category. Oh my gosh, this was another 5-star prediction, but this one I ended up only giving 3 stars. And I was just, I'm so bummed. Every time I see this cover, I just like look at it. Like I walked by it in the bookstore the other day, and I was just like, because I love the first 2 in the series, and this one was just okay. I was so sad. Okay, The Bone Ship's Wake. This is easy. Favorite of the year. Amazing. This series is my all-time favorite series at this point, so like easy place there, no question about it. The Charm Offensive. This one was another really solid romance. I thought it was gonna be cute and fun, and I really enjoyed it. The Crown of Gilded Bones. This one's certainly straddling the line between these two, I think it's going to go in the Houston trash throws because, again, like this one, the first emotion I think of when I see it or talk about it or hear people talk about it was like, oh, it just wasn't good. It just wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't like a book. um, it was 600 pages of filler book because the author decided to extend the series, but she needed to put something in this book, but she couldn't wrap it up because she had 3 more books to write. So that's how I feel about that book. Very, very disappointing and not good. The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai. I'm actually going to put this one in exceeded expectations because right before picking it up, I saw another YouTuber who reviewed it, and I think she DNF'd it. And so because of that, I like lowered my expectation. I already had a copy of it, so I was going to read it, but I lowered my expectations after that, and I actually liked it. Like, I was like, oh, this was actually cute. So we definitely disagreed on that one, but because I lowered it, and it ended up being a solid romance, exceeded my expectations there. All right, Devil and the Heiress by Harper St. George, another favorite of the year. I adore this series, and so the other one in that series, I'm just going to go ahead and put it up there because they're both up there. These are both top romances for me for this year, and yeah, adore these series. That series. The Donut Trap by Julie Chu. This was a disappointment. It was like disappointing in that it wasn't really a romance. It ended up being more of a contemporary, and I like things about it. It wasn't a bad book, but it was just fine. It ended up being fine. I was disappointed in all the romance aspects of it because that was definitely what it was being pushed as, and it had good things, but yeah, just fine. The Echo Wife by Sarah Galey. All right, this one probably here. This was a really solid sci-fi mystery book. I enjoyed it. But again, not a new favorite or anything, but definitely solid. The X-Hex. This one, another Lol Mets disappointment. I thought this was gonna be just like such a fun little witchy contemporary, and it was just kind of bland. It was like if you took a Hallmark movie but made it an 8-hour like mini series, but with the same level of content you got in the 2-hour movie. It kind of like there's a reason Hallmark movies are 2 hours because if you go past that, they lose their luster for what they are because you spend too much time in their kind of cookie cutter, too good to be cutesy world. And that's kind of how I felt about this one. We spent too much time there because it takes me more than 2 hours to read the book, and so at some point, kind of lost the luster of the small town vibes. The X Talk by Rachel and Solomon. This one was a surprise because I hadn't been hearing like glowing reviews, so I had pretty normal 4-star expectations for it, and I really liked it. I ended up really liking it. I thought it was super fun, so this one definitely surprised me as well. The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This one is performed as expected because it was a 5-star prediction and ended up being 5 stars. So it was definitely my favorite historical fiction I read that year, so I might put it up there for that, but I didn't read that many historical fictions either. But it was a 5 star, so it's between these two. I think I'll put it up here as it was my favorite historical fiction I read overall last year, so it will get that top spot. The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. This one, favorite. This was easily my favorite mystery thriller I read last year. I listened to it on audio, and I was like glued to the audio. Like I was finding any reason I could to be doing things to keep listening because I can't just sit and listen to an audiobook. I had to be doing something. Usually I listen while driving. Or doing chores. So I was like finding any chore I could just to keep listening. This was so good. Okay, next is The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. And this was interesting because my expectations changed for it like several times before I actually read it. So my initial expectations, it would have been a disappointment. But luckily, I tempered my expectations based on other people's reviews. And I think, therefore, I'm putting it in it performed as expected by my final expectations. The Inheritance of Orchidea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. This one's gonna be San Francisco Giants because I was not a big magical realism person. I read a couple in a college English class and didn't like them, so I kind of avoided it. But I've been wanting to try Zoraida Cordova based on some of her prior books as well, and I saw this in the library one day, and I was like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's try a standalone. And I'd heard good reviews from people, so I tried it, and I really liked it. I was surprised. So it definitely surprised me just because I had such low expectations, and it definitely interested me maybe to try and pick up some more magical realism here and there. And maybe the ones I read in college just weren't the ones for me, but maybe others are. Next is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This was a favorite of the year. I love this book. I love Tasha Suri, so easy put up there, no question about it. Ladies of the Secret Circus by Constance Sayers. This was like a historical fantasy with some mystery vibes about like a hidden circus, and I thought it was a really solid kind of historical fantasy vibes. Yeah, it was good. It was a good one. The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is another one where I saw enough reviews of it before reading it that I tempered my expectations down, and therefore it ended up meeting those expectations because I had lowered them. And yeah, it was fine. The problem with this one was it had two timelines, and one was really good and one was just okay. But luckily, I had been warned of that going into it. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Yeah, this is an easy favorite of the year. I adored this book so much. Definitely my favorite contemporary romance of the year. The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. This was a super disappointment. Oh, this one hurt. This was another 5-star prediction. It ended up only being 3. It was just fine. It was like this book was just fine. It was kind of boring for parts of it, and I was so sad because I loved The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. That was one of my favorite romances I read last year, and this one was just, it was disappointing. The Ruthless Lady's Guide to Wizardry by C.M. Wagoner. Unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to put this one in the disappointing category as well. I liked this one, but not as much as I had hoped and wanted to. It just fell a little flat. Not a bad book, but it had some lulls in the pacing, I think, which just didn't love, but it was still good, but not great, not what I expected. The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. I think I'm going to have to. Ooh, this one's definitely wavering between these two. Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'd feel equally like negative and just disappointed. I think I'll put it here because it started off okay. No, I think I'm gonna put it there. Yeah, I just, the main character felt so incompetent as a detective. Um, and it was just kind of boring. Like it had no, like the reveals, even though I didn't figure them ahead of time, had no impact, which is just like the complete opposite of what I want in a thriller, which is just not good. So I think we're gonna put it there for that. The Siren by Catherine St. John. This is as expected. I really liked her previous book, and I thought this one was good. It was really solid. I did not like it as much as the first one, but I think this one did give me what I wanted from it. The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This one, trash throws, easy. This might be my least favorite of the ones in this category. It read like bad The Hating Game fan fiction, and I didn't like The Hating Game to start with, so it just like was like took bad source material and just made it worse. That sounds, oh, that's so bad, but no shade if you liked it. Many people do, but I really did. The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. This one was good. Yeah, I think the thing with this one was I wasn't really sure what to expect because it's a Jane Eyre retelling, but it's a thriller. So I like my expectation as far as like how much I liked it, like star rating, enjoyment level wise, delivered on that. But it gave me a retelling in a different way than I expected, but it was a lateral different, not better or worse. So, as expected. The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. This one is going the same way as some of these others in the low mets, like these, where it was a good book, but because I put it on a 5-star predictions list and it was only a 4-star, it by definition underperformed. But as with this other, it was still really good and I definitely enjoyed it. Just didn't completely fall in love like I had really hoped for. That's the problem with 5-star predictions is you set your expectations so high that it's not hard to fall short. Okay. The Woman That Could Not Silence by Kate Moore. This one, so I'd read The Radium Girls by her and really enjoyed it, so I was definitely excited to pick up another one by her, and it was a really interesting story. So yeah, it was solid. It was solid, which is what I expected. The Women of Chateau Lafayette by Stephanie Dre. Another just very solid historical fiction that I liked. Twice Shy by Sarah Hogel. This one performed as expected. Another one of those. It was a 5-star, but I had such high expectations that it just met my expectations because I loved her first one. Was like, oh, I expect to love her second, and I did. Not quite enough to put it in the favorites tier though, so therefore it's sitting in this as expected tier. Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. This one hurts, but it's going a little mess because it was disappointing. I was just bored by a lot of it, and I really liked the house in this Reliance Sea, so I had higher expectations, and it just didn't deliver. While We Were Dating by Jasmine Guillory. This one is our last entry to this category. I had fairly low expectations for most of the book. It was kind of sitting in that low mess, but then like the last third, second half, somewhere around there, it introduced a really poorly executed fake dating trope, both in the execution of the literal trope and the fact that it was introduced so late was very odd to me in its execution. And my that's like my favorite contemporary romance trope, so that pushed it into this tier. I dislike that addition of that trope so much, the way it was executed, that it went from it put it here. And our last book on this list, Winterkeep by Kristen Kishore, unfortunately is another disappointment. We ended that rough. The bottom of the alphabet was rough, but this one, oh, it was just okay. Like, it was fine. It was, I really loved Graceling and that original series back when I was younger. I reread them and still really liked them. And so I just had higher expectations, but this one was just okay. It was one of those books that just had like things I liked, but an equal amount of things I disliked. So it was just kind of middle of the road, unfortunately. So that was my last 2021 new release that I read in 2021. So let's see. We have our top tier. These are all my standout favorites of the year. Next, we have the surprises category, which is just whatever my expectations were. They exceeded them for some reason. Then my performed as expected tier, which, as expected, has the most in it. Although I did expect it to actually be a little bit larger, and I kind of thought the disappointments would be a little bit smaller, but nope, this all looks right. Looking at it again, I'm agreeing with where I've placed all of them. I just guess I remembered fewer disappointments. But here's my disappointments tier, performed less than I expected, which is an interesting mix of ratings as well. Given that some of these just had such high expectations that a 4-star put them here. And then we have my smallest category, which this is a good category to be smallest, with books that I just really didn't like. And yeah, there we go. If you've read any of these, let me know if you agree with my rankings. If you are a baseball fan, let me know in the comments. See if anyone else could appreciate my tiers, or if you disagree with my tiers. And what was your most surprising and favorite new release of last year? I will talk to you in my next video.